Hello, this is Billy Core from the Nostalgia Mall, and welcome to this video where we're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of a very important operating system that Microsoft released in the year 2000. No, not that one, the other one. Yes, that's right. Today we're going to be looking back on the release of Microsoft Windows Millennium Edition, or as it's more commonly known as Windows ME. Windows ME is quite an interesting operating system. You probably already know that it was widely panned by critics. It was supposedly extremely unreliable, extremely slow, extremely unoptimized. It burned our crops, poisoned our water supply, and delivered a plague into our houses. Well, I can see why they would say that. I've had some pretty rough experiences with Windows ME. However, I've also had some pretty good experiences with Windows ME. And so I figured today we would install Windows ME on my Windows 98 system right here on the right, the Carolina Flyer, and just see how well it runs on this system. Recently, YouTuber LGR, a channel that I watch extremely regularly, and I'm sure many of you watch as well, also did a very similar video to this not too long ago about Windows ME, and I will go ahead and tell you that video is probably a million times better than whatever this video is going to turn out to be. So if you want some true history behind Windows ME and how it really runs and all that good stuff, I highly recommend checking out LGR's video instead of this one. But if you're a glutton for punishment, you can stick around and see what I come up with here. Now, Windows ME came out in September of the year 2000, and right now it's only May of 2020, so we're celebrating this a little bit early. Well, maybe not celebrating, but more like commemorating it. And the reason I'm doing it now instead of September is, well, I'm getting married in September. And I'm not going to have time to do this in September, so we're going to go ahead and do this right now. So we'll go ahead and turn the Carolina Flyer on. Okay, here's the CD we're going to be upgrading with. This obviously is not the original cover art for Windows ME. I actually cut this out of a copy of Nickelodeon magazine when I was about 10 or 11 and stuck this in here. Yeah, Michael Schaaf's Broken Windows 2001. The operating system that's as annoying as that no good neighbor kid. In fact, it was all his idea. Isn't that just like him? And he's the maker of Bad Words for Windows, Internet Explorer 5.0, and Quick and Runaway. So that is highly entertaining there. Now, of course, when you open it up, we get the actual Windows ME CD with its very, very cool holographic label, letting you know that this is a genuine Microsoft compact disc, and this is an upgrade copy. As a matter of fact, not only is this an upgrade copy, this was the special upgrade copy that Microsoft released for users of Windows 98. You see, the cost for a regular upgrade copy of Windows ME was $100, but for $60 you could buy a step-up upgrade, which would take your Windows 98 computer to Windows ME, but it would only work if you had Windows 98, which I did at the time. So my dad only had to pay $50 for it. I'm pretty sure it was $50. We got it at Best Buy in September or October of 2000. So, let's go ahead and poison this poor little computer. Now, before anyone panics, I'm actually doing this on a separate SD card. This computer uses an SD card adapter for a hard drive. And so I just cloned my existing Windows 98 install to a separate SD card, so once I'm done with this video I can just take the card out and put the original back in, and I'll be back to using Windows 98 Second Edition just like it was before, like nothing ever happened. So we can see here we are indeed running Windows 98 Second Edition. Just a reminder what the specs of this computer is. It's a Intel Pentium 3 clocked at 866 megahertz with a Voodoo 3 video card and 512 megs of RAM. So pretty powerful system for when Windows ME came out. So can't believe what I'm about to do to this poor computer. Here we go. Go ahead and pop it into the DVD drive. Ugh, felt dirty doing that. But we haven't even started yet. So yeah, this is going to be an in-place upgrade. Okay, this CD-ROM contains a newer version of Windows than the one you are presently using. Would you like to upgrade your computer to this new version of Windows Millennium now? Why, yes we do, reluctantly. Oh, that's interesting. Look how large the text is in the setup window there. And I believe that's because I'm using a higher resolution monitor with this than what I usually use on a system like this. This was actually the first time I ever upgraded a version of Windows, because all the prior versions of Windows we ever had in my family was pre-installed on a computer. So this was my first upgrade copy of a version of Windows. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, it's checking the system. It's checking drive C right now. Here it comes. Probably should have closed some background applications, but we'll be fine. What could possibly go wrong? It's only Windows ME. Congratulations on choosing Windows Millennium Edition, the software that makes your computer more powerful, reliable, debatable, manageable, again debatable, and entertaining. Now I will admit it did add some good entertainment features on here. It came with the first proper version of Windows Media Player that was close to what we know today. Also gave us Windows Movie Maker for the first time. Totally read that. Okay, now for the product key. Okay, it's going to do some more hard disk checking. Forgive the loud fan in this computer. I stuck a fan on the Voodoo 3, as was recommended by a couple of YouTubers. And the fan works great, but it's a little bit loud. But it's better than the video card melting itself to death. Okay, checking for available disk space. That shouldn't be a problem. This is a pretty big drive. Save system files. Would you like to save your existing system files? This is so if we want to downgrade back to Windows 98 at a later date. But we're not going to do that because I already have this Windows installation cloned to another SD card. So this installation is going to get trashed anyway, whether we save the files or not. And it's going to ask us to make a startup floppy, which we're not. I have a Windows 98 startup floppy that's pretty much the same thing except better, because it's Windows 98, it's just better. Okay, so we've passed the point of no return. It's Windows ME or bust. Goodbye, Windows 98. And during setup, I figured we could sit back and I would tell you my personal tales of Windows Millennium Edition. I remember going to Office Depot with my dad when I was 10 years old one day in September of 2000 and seeing a display at the front of the store for Windows ME. Now I had no clue that there was a new version of Windows coming out. I knew that Windows 2000 had come out at the beginning of the year, and I was really interested in that until I discovered that it was only for business users. But I was a naive 10-year-old who thought that because it was meant for businesses meant that if you ran it on a home computer it would just blow up or something. But so I had no clue that Microsoft was coming out with a new version of Windows, and so obviously being a 10-year-old computer geek, I was obviously intrigued by this. And the whole time we were there, I was just staring at this display of all these upgrade boxes for Windows. And I wanted one. I wanted to upgrade my computer to Windows ME. I didn't care what anyone said, because again, I had no prior knowledge. I didn't do any research on what Windows ME was, but all I knew was there's a new version of Windows, I gotta have it. Of course, I prodded my dad to buy me a copy of it, but of course he said no. Well, the very next day we were out shopping at Best Buy, and they had that exact same display at that store like Office Depot had. And again, I prodded my dad. I wanted to upgrade to Windows ME. Well, he finally gave in, and he bought the $50 step-up upgrade for Windows 98. And I brought it home, and my computer at the time was a E-machine, one of those never obsolete jobs. And it was a very slow computer, but it was pretty dependable. And it came pre-installed with Windows 98 Second Edition. I had purchased that computer that same year, back in, I think, April of 2000. And so I went on ahead and put the CD in and upgraded from Windows 98 Second Edition to Windows ME, and the upgrade process went just fine. And I was absolutely blown away at Windows ME, I guess you could say. I was intrigued by how the desktop icons had changed appearance. I mean, they had changed a little bit between 95 and 98, but from 98 to ME it was a much more dramatic change, especially the My Computer icon. And I had a lot of fun playing with Windows Media Player 7 that night. I remember that was my first time ever listening to a radio station on the internet, and it was very slow because we were still on dial-up. I remember I listened to a what was it, a oldie station out of Jacksonville, Florida, via Windows Media Player that night, and it was pretty cool. And so not long after that, I used the same upgrade copy on my dad's computer, which was a HP Pavilion that we had bought in July of 1999. Again, the upgrade on that was successful, and it ran pretty well on there. And we did the same to my dad's laptop, the Toshiba 2505 CDS. Upgraded it. Of course, it was a Pentium MMX, so it ran a bit slower, but it ran pretty solidly. And on those three computers, from my recollection, I never really had any reliability problems with Windows ME. It ran just as well as Windows 98 did. Maybe a little bit slower since it was an in-place upgrade instead of a clean install of Windows. But other than that, it was a pretty pleasant experience. But then came 2001. We decided that it was time to upgrade my never obsolete E-machine, because guess what, it was obsolete by that time, to a very, very high-end gateway computer, which had a Pentium 3 in it. I don't remember the clock speed. 128 megs of RAM and a 40 gig hard drive. So that was pretty nice for the time. And it came pre-installed with Windows ME. And up to that point, my experiences with Windows ME were upgrades. And so we set the computer up, and that thing was a pile of garbage. The thing would freeze up every few minutes, constant blue screens of death, and I don't know if Windows ME could be blamed for that, but it's possible because I've used Windows ME on other computers over the years, and Windows ME to me, it'll either run just fine or it'll run like total garbage. So it's just a mixed bag of what you're going to get when you install Windows ME. And as a matter of fact, on that gateway, I did eventually do an in-place upgrade to Windows XP, and it still didn't run very well, so I'm thinking the computer itself probably had some reliability issues. But anyway, these days when I'm using a computer of this vintage like we're using right now, I just prefer to use Windows 98 2nd Edition because of two big reasons. One, it's more retro looking. Well, actually three reasons. One, it's more retro looking. Two, it's usually going to be a bit more reliable. And three, Windows ME lacks an easy access to real mode DOS. And that was a big problem with Windows ME back in the day. If you wanted to run DOS games that required real mode DOS and couldn't be run in a window within Windows, you're pretty much out of luck. And there were patches to re-enable DOS mode in Windows ME, but those are very, very spotty at best. I've never been able to get them to work properly, and it's just a little bit too sloppy for my experience, so I just prefer using Windows 98. Not that I hate Windows ME or anything. Like I said, it runs pretty well on certain systems, but it's just I just like Windows 98 better. That's the best way to put it. Okay, the file copy process is done. So we're going to reboot now, I believe, and next time we start this computer up, it'll be running Windows Millennium Edition, whether we like it or not. Here we go. Come on. There we go. Here it is, the Windows ME splash screen. Sad thing about Windows ME's splash screen, when you first start it up for the first time, you don't get the very charming getting ready to run Windows for the first time message like we got on 95 or 98. So, but the funny thing is, the progress bar still had was still blue looking like in 95, 98, even though the rest of it was white. I like making silly observations like that sometimes, because I got nothing else to do with my life, I guess. Oh yeah, we've lost our high color depth, but this is normal. You're now initializing its driver database. Don't know why I sounded country. But I am from the South, and people automatically assume I talk in that accent automatically, so oh well. No sensors were detected in your system. That's from Intel Active Monitor, so why is that coming up? Weird little bug there, no big deal. Like with any version of Windows, I do not recommend doing an in-place upgrade like this. I always recommend doing a clean install of a new version of Windows, because in-place upgrades, while they may work, they can be a little bit buggy at times. Okay, that took longer than I'm used to, but again, that's because we're doing a in-place upgrade. But it wants to restart again. It's been a while since I've done an in-place ME upgrade, but I'm pretty sure that we'll have a full color depth back when we get back into setup. Windows ME, aka Windows Millennium Edition, Windows Mistake Edition, and Windows My Eyes! You know, saying that little bar at the bottom of the screen hasn't moved for a little bit. Has it died, I wonder? Now's a good time for you to go into the comments and say, "I told you so!" Because I think setup may have died. That's not good. Okay, we're back. Just doing a simple hard reset took care of that problem. And just as I thought, we're back at full color depth and resolution. And it still says 16 minutes remaining for setup. Don't know how accurate that is. I usually don't pay attention to that. Okay, final part of setup. It's setting up the control panel and upgrading our start menu shortcuts. And this is the part that usually takes a few minutes, where it updates the system settings. Okay, we're just about done. It says less than a minute remaining. And here's the final restart. So now, after we restart, we'll be able to use Windows ME for real. Okay, I kept my desktop background. So far, so good. Interesting. Usually, when you do an upgrade from 98 to ME, it changes the color of the title bar there. This part stays the same, but this is usually a lighter blue than that, but oh well. First boot up's usually the slowest. Love that drum icon. I'm glad they kept that in from 98. That used to amuse me for no apparent reason as a child. Still does, because I'm still a child at heart, I guess. Okay, so I actually just received a phone call a moment ago, and that caused us to miss the boot up process. But it was what you would expect. It was Windows ME booting up, albeit a little bit slow because it was the first boot up. But we also got to miss the infamous Windows Millennium startup video, which I will show you right now, if I can find it. There we go. So I just got bopped in the head, and now I'm seeing music devices flying around my head. I think I need a doctor. Here's a picture, and here's another picture! Honey, we're getting really tired standing here like this. You've had us standing here for 2 days. Please stop. Another video of those weirdos. I don't even know who they are. Why do they think I'm their grandma? Look at the icons flying out of the monitor. Oh, that son of mine. I'm going to post this on the mom group on Facebook that no one will ever read because they don't like me. Why are we living in a animation of a house? Well, son, it was because we couldn't afford a real house. We're having to live in a drawing. Happy birthday. There's these big zaps of electric energy hitting my computer. Should I be concerned? Nah, no big deal. And we're done. So yeah, Windows ME, the big advertising thing for it was supposed to make digital media, internet usage, and networking a lot easier for people. And as you can see, the desktop looks roughly the same as it did in '98, although you can see some of the icons have changed, like the My Computer icon. And we're now running Windows ME according to that. And all our device drivers are accounted for. Nothing got broken there, thank goodness. And we'll resort that out. And so far, it's running quite reliably. Okay, first thing I want to show is Windows Media Player 7.1 or 7.0. I can't remember which one is on here. They're pretty much identical. And of course, Media Guide's not going to work. Normally it plays that Beautiful Way song by Beck, but on Windows 98 I originally had Media Player 9 installed, and I uninstalled it for the sake of this video to make things go more smoothly, and that may have had something to do with it. No big deal though, it would have copyright claimed this video anyway. But this is 7.0 it looks like. And we can open us up a file to play. Still got the Windows ME CD in, so I'll have to take that out in a minute.
Wherever you're coming from, it all comes together at Carolina Circle Mall. Wherever you're coming from, it all comes together at Carolina Circle Mall.
And as you can see, I just applied one of the mini skins that you could use with Media Player 7. And some of them are a bit shocking looking. Let me find a good example. This one's supposed to look like a rusty radio, I suppose. That's pretty hideous. And a big feature of Windows ME was, of course, Windows Movie Maker, the very first version of Windows Movie Maker, with very early 2000s sounding music. You could connect your camera up through something like FireWire and digitize your video that way. I used to do that on the Windows XP version. Okay, that music gets annoying after a while. Yeah, I never used this version of Windows ME as Windows Movie Maker. I mean, in Windows ME. As a matter of fact, I don't think many people did. It wasn't until Windows XP came along when people really started using Windows Movie Maker. But we can. Do I have any video files on here? I don't want to completely copy LGR's video he made in his Windows ME video. That just wouldn't be right. That'd be cheating. Yeah, if you want to see how this works, just check out LGR's Windows Millennium Edition video. Now this was a bit of a controversial feature. A little thing called System Restore. This is the first version of Windows to have System Restore available. And it never worked right. And of course, since we just installed, we don't have any restore points we can go to except for the system checkpoint from a few minutes ago. But I never got Windows System Restore to work in ME. I did get it to work quite a bit in XP though. I rarely had problems with it in XP, but in Vista 7 and later, it never worked for me there either. So XP seemed to be the sweet spot for System Restore. Okay, now for probably my biggest gripe with Windows ME. As you can see here, there's no more access to MS-DOS mode, which is a real pain in the... never mind. Of course, you can still access a good chunk of these games through Windows anyway, like Jazz Jackrabbit. That still works just fine. And as for, let's say, something a little bit more complicated, about Sky Roads. That still works well. So, it's not a total loss. You can still run many of these DOS games through Windows, but I do know there were a lot of games that didn't play well like this. And so not having that real mode DOS support in Windows ME can be a deal breaker. It is for me, unfortunately. Of course, if you're installing this on a computer that doesn't have a compatible DOS sound card, then it doesn't really make much of a difference now, does it? Jill the Jungle works. And, Flying Tigers. And that works. I'll try one more. Okay, there's no sound effects, but I don't think that's Windows' problem. I think I just don't have it set up properly for this game. As a matter of fact, this game's a little bit finicky with this sound card anyway, so... Anyway, as you can see there, DOS gaming, if you can play it through Windows, still works pretty well, but I still gotta have that real mode DOS support. It drives me crazy without it. And as far as Windows ME on this particular computer is concerned, well, I've only been using it on here for a few minutes, but so far it seems pretty solid. And LGR mentioned something else that I thought was interesting in his video. You know, when Windows ME came out, computers were pretty bogged down with a bunch of bloatware, and people like me, especially at age 10, didn't know how to properly use a computer optimally at the time. And so I remember I would install all the stuff on my computer, including, I'm ashamed to admit, Bonzi Buddy. And that could really bring a system down to its knees, and just upgrading to any OS at that point can cause quite a bit of problems. But now, 20 years later, when we're using these vintage computers, we know how they work. We know what makes them tick, and so we know how to install the proper drivers, install the proper software, and keep them running clean and smooth. And so that's one of the reasons why I think using Windows ME nowadays is a little bit better than it was when it first came out, because we just know how to use it better. And really the same idea can go for other operating systems like Windows 95, 98, etc. So that's just my 2 cents on the Windows ME issue. Again, to me it really depends on the computer. It's not guaranteed it's going to work properly or not work at all. It just depends on the computer and how well it wants to behave with it. And so far on this computer, even though we've only been using it a few minutes, seems to be working pretty well. Again, I'm not keeping this on here. I'm going to swap the SD card back in after this video and go back to the original Windows 98 install that I had before we did any of these upgrades. And so, I guess that's all there is to say in this video. Until next time, this is Billy Core, signing off. Thank you for visiting the Nostalgia Mall. If you liked what you saw, please like, subscribe, and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You may also support me on Patreon if you would like. Until next time, this is Billy Core, signing off.